Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all back to another episode of Onion Soup, the show where we pull back the layers of metaphysics and reality in order to demystify spirituality. And I'd like to welcome back on the show Mr. David Petrovay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Dexter?
Doing pretty wonderful. I was just saying how my allergies have been kicking my butt lately this season.
Oh,
So if I sound a little congested, everybody, I apologize. So I want to dive right into a lot of your work being with the law of attraction. Can you tell us a little bit about the law of attraction first?
sure. Basically, the law of attraction states that basically what we put out is what we receive.
Mm.
So that's the attraction. So when we are positive with our thoughts and our feelings, that's reflected back from the universe with what we get. And so I've been aware of the law of attraction probably for close to 13 years,
Mm.
if not longer. And before that, we're always living the law of attraction,
Right,
Dexter, whether we realize it or not. That, people will say, well, why did that happen to me?
right.
Well, if they were to take a look at why it happened, it would be based upon what they were thinking, what they were feeling at the time, and that message that they were sending out to the universe, and how the universe was responding to that.
Mm. Wow. I love what you say about that because there are a lot of times people don't realize that we're always manifesting, but a lot of times it might be subconscious less than conscious. So when we look at the law of attraction, we talk about the manifestation techniques. We're talking about active manifestation and actively being aware of your surroundings. And a lot of people really just aren't that aware.
That's right. That's right. And yet it's still working.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think that's the interesting piece of it. So it might be worth it to get to educate yourself on the
Mhm.
process so that you're using it to its greatest benefit in your life.
For sure. What is that process?
Well, the process is pretty simple. Okay. It's being mindful of your thoughts and feelings.
Mm.
And then it's the old adage of be careful what you wish for because you might just get it. And oftentimes we do. So it's just sending those thoughts out into the universe, those feelings. And what's really important is being aware of your feelings, your emotions, because your emotions are what create that vibrational frequency that attracts what it is that you desire in your life.
Mm.
So, people say, well, how exactly does that work? Well, for instance, one of the lowest frequencies related to emotions is shame.
Mm.
And then the highest is enlightenment. So they each have a vibrational frequency. So it's not unusual, for instance, that people who are contemplating suicide,
Mm.
a lot of that is associated with shame, which is a very low vibrational level. So it's important to do what you can to raise that. And that's through our thoughts, how we live our lives, and just basically how we proceed with what's happening and how we accept it or don't accept it. Because, we don't always get what we think we should. And how do we deal with that? Do we see it as, well, now I'm a victim of this? Or, oh, well, it's simply another challenge to overcome. I know I can do this. And I know that I'll be sent what I need in order to overcome it. So that moves you up in your vibrational level. And it's not just people who vibrate, it's the entire planet that vibrates. So there's like a collective vibration that we need to be aware of. And in the past, I've been able to use muscle testing as a form of tuning in to what that planetary vibrational level is. I haven't done it lately, but probably would be a good idea to see
Yeah.
where we are.
Let's talk about that because there's oh my god, what's the word? There's a word for it, kinesthetics probably, but don't quote me, that might not be the right word. But there's a word for it when you do use muscle testing and muscle, resistance in
Yes.
order to get yes and no questions, not just from the universe to yourself. Can you give, like, an example of how you would do that for somebody that wants to ask perhaps a yes or no question to the universe?
So, one area that I am certified in is called the emotion code. And that was developed by Dr. Bradley Nelson, who is a chiropractor. And you use muscle testing to help people identify any trapped emotions that they may be dealing with that are keeping them from living the life that they're meant to live. And so I ask the person, okay, what is it that you're dealing with in your life today that you would like to be different? And so they'll point it out. And then I just ask the universe, does this person have any trapped emotions that they're willing to release today? And that's when the muscle testing kicks in. And I use what's called the sway test. That seems to be the most effective for me. So my body acts like a divining rod where I just stand straight up. And if the answer is yes, my whole body shifts forward. So it sways forward. If it's a no, it just stands still. And not only can you deal with or identify that trapped emotion, but you also have the ability through yes or no responses to identify the age at which it was trapped. And sometimes it's the people who were involved with that.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how it works because the people that I work with will say, how did you know that? How did you know that that happened when I was 6 years old and it involved this person? Well, I don't. So I'm simply acting as a channel for that information to come through me through muscle testing. And so it's been very effective. In some cases, I've been able to identify an age where a major trauma took place. One person I worked with, the same age kept coming up. And I said, is there any significance to this age in your life? And she said, well, that's the year that I was sexually molested.
Mm,
And so we were able to release a lot of the emotions around it. And then at that point, I also suggested that she seek some professional support
mhm.
around working through this. So, again, very, very powerful in terms of the information that it provides people. And I've been doing this for probably close to 10 years.
Wow. I actually had some experience with the, emotion code maybe 2 years or so ago when I
Okay.
first came across the information, and I tested it with myself, and
Mhm.
so fascinating. I was able to release some trapped emotions that I didn't really realize were there. I recalled some of the trauma, but I didn't realize how deep it went, and as I started to do some of the muscle testing with myself, I realized that a lot of it came from previous generations, some of it came from my mom's side, some came from my dad's side, but what I found most fascinating was there were points while I was doing this where I would ask, "Is it worth me or is it in my highest spiritual benefit to know the specifics surrounding this situation?" And sometimes it would be yes, and then sometimes it would be no, and when it was no, it's just, "Now release it and let it go," and I did. So it's so fascinating how wonderful these things work.
Yeah, and what's so powerful about a technique like this that's different from someone going into cognitive therapy, let's say, and there's nothing wrong with cognitive therapy, but what the emotion code can do is identify where this originated in past generations, where you don't necessarily get that when you're talking to a therapist. You find that maybe this was inherited from a grandparent and what their issues were around it. And the wonderful thing about this is when you release it in the present, you're also able to release it from those past generations. And with myself, I remember doing this once. And most of the time I'll get, well, maybe it goes back 3 generations. Well, mine went back hundreds of generations that this problem, this trapped emotion, had been passed down and passed down. And so there's this sense of freedom that you achieve when all of those are released. You just begin to live life differently.
Yeah, and for people who I try to think of how to really explain it because for me, when I was asking about the previous generations, and I was told that it didn't really matter. All that matters is that I'm willing to let it go and to release it for the generations. And I would say the feeling directly after had great sleep that night. And, the feelings directly after was almost like a sense of calm and peace, and, I almost it's like I didn't know why, but I knew why, if that makes sense. I didn't know the
Yes.
specifics behind the trauma, but I knew that I had done enough of the emotional work to release it and let it go.
Yeah, and because this is trapped at the less than conscious level, many times people will not recall the specific events associated with it. And as you said, all that matters is it's released, it's gone. And the interesting thing is, I've done this so many times with people, and my concern is, oh, it's going to show up with the same trapped emotion, which is not supposed to happen around an issue. I've never had that occur, Dexter. So, and sometimes I'll think, oh, I know what emotion is going to show up, and I'm wrong. I thought, oh, it seemed obvious that it should have been this, but that's not what was trapped.
Yeah, that's definitely my experience as well. I thought that I knew what the problems were, but it was so drastically different than what my own expectations were. And when people ask me, like, well, how were you able to get past it? And there are other things I did as well. We talked about cognitive therapy and talk
Mhm.
therapy. I've done those things as well. I've definitely seen therapists. I won't say that this is the only method, but there are just different ways to releasing various levels of trapped emotions and trauma. But one thing I wanted to circle back around to was when we were talking about the law of attraction earlier. And I feel that a lot of people get so fixated on this one particular law, but there are other universal laws, universal principles. So, can you enlighten us a little bit about what the other ones are?
So there is the law of circulation. These are called spiritual laws of the universe, universal laws. So, for instance, with the law of circulation, it's based upon what goes around, what goes around comes back. And so it's the idea of doing good in the world because the good that you put out there will return in one form or another. It has to do with money. That's why they call money currency. It flows.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, I need to get a drink of water. So again, it's just again what you put out there will come back, and it'll come back many times tenfold, which
Mhm.
is a message that we hear. So again, it's be careful what you're putting out there, and people will refer to that as karma. There is the law, a similar law, the law of reciprocity. Again, what goes out comes back. It's reciprocal. Um, Gee, right? I should have had my list of all those different universal laws because there are many of them. And what you can do is just Google,
Yeah,
the spiritual laws of the universe,
for sure.
and it will give you quite a few.
Yeah, when we look at the law of reciprocity and the law of circulation, give and take, energetic exchange, I came across something the other day where we're talking about finances, and this guy mentioned how our money and our currency system is really just the energetic exchange for our socio-economic system. And that's just how energy is physically exchanged currently in our time period. And I thought that was really fascinating because I feel that when people look at money and finances, it's the idea that the money is the root of all evil and money corrupts absolutely and all these other things. Like, well, that's not true. That's just the energy exchange.
Right.
Yeah, but when you put out into the universe that you have this almost fear of money, that's why it's difficult for you to increase your own finances.
So that's where scarcity comes in.
Mm,
So, in terms of the law of attraction, if you're putting out a fear of not having money, the universe will respond to that with, oh, so this is something that upsets you, you're fearful of. Why would I want to provide you with something that is going to feed into that fear and being upset? So it doesn't withhold out of a form of punishing you for it, but it's just responding to your thoughts. So when you change that thought to one of abundance, that's the universe. The universe is all about love and abundance, and it only wants what's best for you. That's what you experience in life. And abundance comes in so many forms, as we know, Dexter.
Yeah.
And money is just one form of abundance. And we'll always have what we need.
Yes, definitely, and I feel that, the scarcity mindset is really what holds most people back, but also putting limitations onto the universe, saying that my abundance has to come in the form of wealth. We were talking last time about really just being open to receiving in any way that that the universe really deems necessary, not putting so many constraints upon the way that we're gonna get our finances if we're talking about money or the way that we're gonna get to that trip in Bora Bora. Don't worry about how the money is gonna come to you. Just focus on the end goal. I'm going to get there. You know?
I think there should be a law of surprises, because the universe is constantly surprising us with how it delivers on our thoughts and our emotions. Because you say, oh, I never expected it to come in that form.
Yeah.
And it does.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I do a daily blog that I post on my website.
Mhm,
And the one that will be posted for tomorrow is titled, I think, I appreciate your patience.
mhm.
And that's a big part of this is being patient because the universe's timeline is often different than ours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we want it and we want it now in this very moment. And the universe says it's not time yet.
Mhm.
Everything has to be in alignment. And when it is, it will happen.
Yeah. We're gonna take a really quick commercial break, but I definitely wanna dive more into the universe's quote unquote timeline. Be right back, everybody. All right, welcome back, everyone. So, excuse me. Before we left, we were talking about the universe's timeline versus our timeline. And I think it's really important to recognize the fact that one, time is relative, and the universe doesn't perceive time if the universe perceives time the way that we do. We think that things are so finite and that we have to have it right now. And if it doesn't happen right now, it's never going to happen. And that's simply not the case.
That's true. Because my understanding is that time is a human construct, that it really doesn't exist in the universe. And most of us don't even understand what the concept of time is.
Mhm,
Because if we think about it, in our reality, there's only this moment. The past that's just a memory.
mhm,
Okay. The future is a prediction,
mhm,
and it's the present, which is a microsecond that exists. So as soon as I finish this sentence, it's in the past. It's just a memory. And what I plan to do for the rest of the day is a prediction that may or may not happen
mhm,
even. So, yeah, the universe has its own way of looking at how and when it delivers on our thoughts, what it is that we desire in life. And one of my stories around that is in moving from California to Oregon. So, had a condo in California in 2000, right before the pandemic, put it up for sale, and we're ready to move. did all of the remodeling, and then the pandemic. Okay, so everything was put on hold. The realtor couldn't even show the unit because of the restrictions.
Wow.
When is this going to sell? Are we going to get what we deserve financially for it? We sit on it and sit on it. And in, I believe, 2 years' time, I think we had three offers that were just ridiculous in nature. So we said, nope, that won't work for us. And then finally, when I released the outcome and said, it's going to sell when it's meant to sell. I'm in Italy on vacation. I get an email from the realtor saying, okay, we have an offer, and it's right in the ballpark with what you were wanting. And so came home. That would have been in August. In September, we're on our way to Bend, Oregon. That's how
Wow.
quickly it happened. And what I realized, Dexter, was the home that we live in, which is like your dream forever home,
Yeah.
before that was not available.
Mm.
Okay. There was someone living there. And so everything had to fall into place for that to happen. In fact, the home we live in now, someone had already put in an offer that was accepted.
Mm.
And I thought, well, is this the end of it? And I thought, no, if this is what we're meant to have, something will happen.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the person who made the offer withdrew it. And
Mm.
before the owners could put it back on the market, we
Mhm.
raised our hand and said, we'll take it. So we drove to Bend on a Saturday. Sunday morning, we saw the house. Tuesday morning, it was going into contract. It
Wow.
happened that fast.
Wow.
So the universe has a very different timeline. And I'm sure as your listeners look at their lives, they'll identify, ways in which it's shown up for them.
Wow.
Where I thought it was going to be now, but in waiting for it, it was even better.
Mm. Wow, it's funny, I actually have a very similar story. Our current home that we live in, my fiancé and I this is right during the pandemic, our apartment lease was about to be up, and I said, "We have to go buy a house." I don't wanna be in this apartment for another year, but it's either now or we have to wait until next year. Everybody told me not to buy, the country was shutting down, and I was like, "No, we're gonna get a house, don't worry about it. Something's gonna work for us, something's gonna happen." So what I said was, "I want you to write down the house that you want. Like, don't put so many constraints on it as far as, like, exactly what it looks like, but do we want a two-story house? What do we want? Do we want a pool?" Like, the things that we wanted in the house. Couldn't find anything. Nothing's on the market. We would literally go to open houses, and while we were standing in the open house, somebody else would've bought it. So, we thought that we just weren't gonna get a place, and for me, I would say we thought that, but I knew we were gonna get it when it was time.
Mhm.
To about a week before our lease is up in the apartment, we find a house, and it's exactly what we were looking for, exactly in our price range to the T. And, we actually got outbid by somebody on that particular home, but for whatever reason, the house didn't come with any appliances, and we didn't care because we wanted to buy our own appliances anyway.
Mhm.
Because we were willing to get our own appliances and we didn't require for any to be there, that qualified us to get the house. And when I tell you, David, that this was literally a week out of, we would have been on the streets. So we either have to spend like I think a week in a hotel just because of the time it takes for the paperwork and everything like that. But outside of that, we got our dream home. Well, we got our first home. This isn't our forever home.
Yes, and you're at an age where most likely it won't be, but
Mhm.
where I am in my age, this will be it.
Yeah,
I'm sure. And so I just think I'll always put out there in terms of the law of attraction, this or something better.
yeah.
So what we live in now, people said, you should have been arrested for theft
Mhm.
because what you paid for this house and what it's actually worth, that was a steal.
Yeah.
Because we have the biggest home in the development and we're on a double lot.
Wow.
And the backyard has a water feature with waterfalls, and it's just beautiful in the spring, summer, and fall. So we couldn't ask for any more. And we have deer constantly coming through the back. And it's people said, "Do you live in a park?" It feels like it. Yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely beautiful. Well, that's actually all the time that we have for today, and I really want to thank you, Mr. David, for coming on and talking about the law of attraction. I think it's very important for people to get kind of a real understanding of what that is, and to recognize that there are also other laws that exist in the universe.
Yes.
And thank you everybody for coming on, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Okay.